Haley B is a psychic medium who's the host of one of my favorite podcasts, Opening the Door. She interviews all types of psychics, mediums, and other people in the spirituality space on her podcast. Haley suppressed her psychic and mediumship abilities in her youth until she decided to move away from fear and open her door. Today, she runs her podcast and business to help others feel seen. Haley believes that everyone can access their psychic abilities with a little help and practice, and that if we were all able to access our intuition more readily, the world would change for the better. We're chatting with Haley today on Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, Haley. How are you doing today?
Hi, Juan. I am so excited to be here and just like chat with you. We had so much fun on Opening the Door chatting, and I am so excited to like be on the other side this time.
And Opening the Door, I said this in my intro to this episode, but it's one of my new favorite podcasts. And I already told you I'm being a total overboard, but I'm starting from the beginning because I loved the episode you did with Natalie Namaste, who's my good friend. And I started listening to the one after that. I'm like, you know what? Let me start at the beginning because I really like the way you interview. You're a very good interviewer. So the standard's high tonight. So I'm very excited to chat with you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for the love. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's just so much fun, and yeah, so excited to be here.
Yeah, and so tell us, for those who do not yet know you, what do you do in terms of like your spiritual modality, and also a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello, everybody. My name is Haley B. Juan already introduced me at the beginning of the pod, but some things that I do. I am a psychic medium, first and foremost. It's what I have trained myself in and have trained in for the past years. And it just has opened up so much in my heart, and I love it so much. And the podcast was really born from feeling like I wanted to share and make people feel less alone. So that was the main reason I started the podcast. And because my journey really started very fear-based. I felt like I was having, little spirit encounters. I was having a lot of flow, and I didn't know how to control it, and I was afraid. And so I created that door within my mind's eye and closed it really tight shut and was like, I am protected now. Like this, none of it's coming through. And I feel normal now, and like all of that stuff. Right. But obviously it always snuck through. And I always felt like if nothing had happened for a while, I would like go into my mind's eye and like creak open the door and be like, hello, like, so I always had that feeling of wanting to pursue this ability that was sort of just throughout a theme throughout my life growing up. And podcasts were one of the first forms of learning that I turned to when I finally was like, I just have to figure this out. So that's why I ended up starting a podcast. One, you can probably tell I love talking, and two, because
Same.
yeah. Two, because it felt like such an easy and safe way for me to learn, and I wanted to bring that to the world, through myself as well. So that's kind of how the podcast was born.
When I feel like to be a podcaster and not like talking, there would be something wrong with us. So yes, I'm definitely the textbook version of a Gemini. I love talking, so I get it. I get it. And so
Yeah.
I love to ask you, like, what is your earliest memory of interacting or encountering spirit? Like, how did this journey all start for you?
Yeah. My youngest, earliest memory was I was walking down the hallway. I grew up in like a ranch style house. I think most people know what that is, but it's like a one floor house, just a really long house. There's not many stairs or any usually. And so I was walking down our long hallway where like all of our bedrooms were, and I passed by my parents' bedroom, and their door was open, and I saw somebody sitting on the end of the bed. And I knew nobody was in there because I knew both my parents were downstairs. I knew my dad was at work. I knew my mom was downstairs. And I just stopped and thought that was weird. So I backed up a few steps and looked in the door, and there was just nobody there anymore. And the person that I saw, I knew a few things about her immediately when I saw her. I knew that she was a woman. I knew that she had like sort of shoulder length hair, but she sort of came through. She was sitting on the end of the bed and sort of came through like staticky, like, you know, back in the day where you turn to the wrong channel on the TV and it would be like that black and white, like fuzz.
Yeah.
That's almost what it looked like. So that was my very first interaction with a spirit or spirit in general. And I think my house that I grew up in was generally kind of haunted, like generally had a lot of spirit activity. And well, the joke is that I'm followed by, or just the spirits tend to come visit wherever I am. But that house had a lot of activity. So I definitely was exposed to just a certain amount of ghosty stuff growing up. So that's my earliest memory of sort of just the first little glimpse of spirit, for sure.
And you shared very openly, whether it's on your relatively new website, which congrats on the website, the
Thank you.
launch. It's a beautiful website, which you'll
Thank
share at the
you.
end of this podcast for sure. But you share very openly, whether on your website, your social media, and your podcast, about how you decided, and even alluded to it at the beginning of this episode, how you, for a moment, decided to like close that door because there was that fear. So if you're open to sharing it, like what for you fed that fear? Like what was the source of that fear for you?
Yeah, definitely. I am happy to share that. So, one, I think the first thing that's sort of coming to me to talk about right now is that my ego is very fear-based. So, it's definitely one of my biggest ego types is like, what are people going to think of you if you say that? What are people going to think of you if you look like that? What are people going to you know, like that type of fear, sort of just trying to like keep me safe in my little shell. And the second thing was religion, which I think a lot of us in this space can relate to. But for me, there was always this talk of like, if you're connecting with spirits, it's always going to be the bad spirits. Like, what spirits would want to come and talk to you? They're too busy doing stuff on the other side. Like, you're only going to get the wayward spirits if you talk to them. And you should never do a Ouija board. And you should never try to connect with anything ever, basically. Like, it's not your job to connect with spirit. It is a preacher's job or it is a minister's job. It's not your job to connect with spirit, and you shouldn't do it because that's bad. And so I grew up with a lot of that fear internalized, and that really informed the beginning of my journey because I was having these experiences and, you know, ghosts were appearing to me and I was having intuitive hits and all this stuff. And it felt like, I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm either crazy or I'm not allowed to be doing this. So that is really where that fear and that like closing the door, like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to feel this way. That's where that came from.
Yeah, totally relate. And I don't remember, for me, these experiences came much later in life in my young adulthood. That's when they started. But definitely the fear base. My ego is also very fear based. It's interesting because I just had a therapy appointment today, and something that we call my ego in within my sessions, we call it the bodyguard. It's like an extremist version of a bodyguard. Like, don't get into that relationship because you know it's going to fail, or you know it's, which is usually not true in my experience of relationships. It's just my bodyguard saying that. So totally hear you. And with religion, yeah, how did you navigate, like what were your first steps towards opening your door? Like what were the first signs, or the first indication that you were now comfortable to fully embrace this side of you, this part of you?
Yeah. So when I went away to college, so I went to, and we talked about this a little bit in your episode of Opening the Door podcast, but I also went to a religious high school. So I was like really, I want to say, like, I don't know that I was ever really deep in the religion thinking like this one God, like all of that stuff, but I was obviously experiencing religion almost every day in high school, right? So I went to college, a regular college, not church based at all. And it sort of just started shedding away. It started falling away. And I feel really grateful for that. Like, that felt actually like not too hard of an experience. There's obviously definitely internalized stuff that still needs deconstructing in all of us. We live in a really super Christian based society in general. But that stuff sort of just started to fall away. And actually, for a while in college, I was an atheist. I was like, I don't believe in anything. I think this is it. We're born by accident and we die, and that is completely it. Like, there's nothing on the other side. There's nothing. And I think that was just another way for me to feel like in control of what was going on in terms of like spiritual encounters and stuff like that. But it did not at all, I realized, vibe or jive with what I was actually experiencing, which was seeing ghosts and just like receiving intuition and stuff like that. And I finally realized that those two things, that my reality that I was living in and my belief in atheism, actually didn't make any sense to my lived reality. And so I sort of started to step away from that. I was like, okay, well, I know ghosts are real. Like, I've seen too many of them to pretend that there might not be anything on the other side, or maybe the time works differently than we assume. But I just started to step away from that. And that was in college. So I was like really sort of starting to, I think I was kind of known as like the witchy weird one in our friend group anyway. So it wasn't too hard of like a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like it wasn't a departure,
Yeah, it wasn't
right?
too hard of a like a personality for me to step into, because it was my personality. You know what I mean? Like the identity, I think, is the word I was looking for. So it wasn't too hard of an identity for me to step into, but obviously, as we talked about, fear-based ego stepped in plenty of times. And then I realized much later, after college, I sort of got into the workforce and was sort of bogged down by all that, like living this 3D life. And in like 2018 or 2019, I just felt randomly in my kitchen one day, just thought, if I don't figure this out, I'm going to be so mad at myself when I'm like 55. I don't know. I just had this feeling that if I didn't learn or even try to work with whatever was going on with me, that I was going to be really pissed later on. So that's when I started listening to podcasts and sort of getting, just like generally dipping my toe in education.
And my next question was going to be about like, what has been your favorite resource? I imagine it's been podcasting, but before we get into that, I might have also mentioned this in our episode, but yeah, going from a very religious high school myself too, to then a non-religious, non-religiously biased college campus. Like, I think in high school, I remember hearing almost like warnings, like, you're going to go out into the world in college, you have to be careful, spread the word. It's going to be a lot of temptation. I'm here in college, I'm like, this is great. I'm seeing women in hijabs, I'm seeing people of different religions, I'm seeing protests. This is exciting. And it definitely contributed to, I mean, everything is spiritually relevant, right, in our life. It's not like our education, like there's nothing lives in a silo, in my opinion, from our spiritual journey. So that was part of my journey too, and it sounds like it contributed to yours, of shedding away some of that fear and some of that part of us that was a little too grounded in the traditions of the world and of this country. So
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
that it makes me really happy for us, because it could have been gone very differently. I almost thought about applying to a religious college. That was in the back of my mind, because that would
Yeah.
have been safer, quote unquote.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think about that a lot too. Like you said, like what would have been different, and would I still be too scared? And I'm so glad that I'm not. But yeah, it could have gone 100,000 different ways, I think. And I think I just want to touch on this really quickly, because when I was in this religious schooling and stuff, I feel like I remember feeling like not too attached to God. And I really feel for people who need to do more deconstruction as on their attachment to like the white man sky daddy God. And I don't use the word God. I don't feel
Did you say
comfortable.
Sky Daddy? I love that. That I've never heard before. I'm going to
Oh my gosh,
totally
really?
refer,
Oh my gosh,
because
it's like one of my favorite
I
little
call
funny
it
ways.
capital God. God. That's how I refer to my higher power. And I don't believe that they have a gender. However, I may just use Sky Daddy just for the hell of it. But
I know,
anyways,
right?
please continue.
So funny. But yeah, I always when I look back at that time when I was really like exposed to religion, 5 days a week, because my parents did not take us to church on
Mine
Sundays,
neither.
and
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm glad that they didn't. But so like those 5 days a week, I feel like I didn't have this deep rooted attachment to what God was, and I feel grateful for that. Yeah, it's just interesting to look back on it and think like, I almost feel like there was sort of this veil over it that didn't root me in it too deeply, which I'm also grateful for. Like maybe that was my guides just popping in and being there before I knew they were there or something. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to mention that as part of my journey as well.
No, I had a very similar experience. I grew up I went to a public school until the third grade because I had some not great experiences at that specific school with some classmates just being made fun of. I mean, we're empathetic people, right? I would take it very seriously if someone said a nasty thing to me. So my parents switched me to a Catholic school, fourth through eighth grade. My academics improved. I felt like I felt safer just being myself a little bit more. And then from there to a Protestant high school. So, but throughout that whole process, my parents were not church going people. My parents were very spiritually progressive. If anything, I'm the one that became, as I mentioned on your episode, on your podcast, of the born again Christian in the family. But I think I was also in the closet as a gay kid. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I think, I'm also grateful that at least at home, I did not have that very strict, like, I'm glad we didn't go to church every weekend as much as my dad would sometimes gripe about it. I'm glad we didn't, because I think that kept me a little bit, it grounded me, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And
For sure.
that was also part of the journey. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so, for you, you mentioned podcasts a couple of times as being a resource that you used at the beginning. So when you were starting to delve into this and become more comfortable with this, are there any podcasts you remember like were like your go-tos?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I literally remember sitting down at my computer and Googling like best podcast to learn about psychic stuff or like something. And so I got like this list of top 10. I have no idea who wrote it. Like I just read through it. So I flipped through a few and I listened to a few. I subscribed to a bunch of them and then I unsubscribed from a bunch of them once they sort of fell away. I don't know. It's just like how I do things. I'll like
Same thing for
dive.
me.
Yeah. And then I'll be like, okay, well, I'll let this fall away in that. So one of my absolute favorite ones is Psychic Teachers Podcast. It is just, there is a wealth of episodes. They've been podcasting for like I think 10 or 12 years, so there's a huge catalog that you can like scroll back and back and back on. And that's what I did. I scrolled really far back and sort of, I didn't start from the very beginning, but I have listened to a lot of their podcasts and I still listen to them to this day because it's with Samantha Faye and Deb Bowen. And I don't know, I love their podcast style and they share so much information. So that one, Enlightened Empaths, is another one that I came to, also hosted by Samantha Faye, but with Denise Carell also. Those are my top two favorite. Obviously, now I listen to Third Eye Sight as well. So
Of
love
course, you
that
know,
one.
you have to say that, but sure, of course you do.
Yeah. And yeah, so that felt, there was probably other ones that I picked up along the way, but those are the two that stay with me even now. So those are the two that feel really the most special to my heart. And I also started listening to Witch Wednesdays as well, which is sort of a more witchy podcast, like really about witchcraft. And I don't know that I consider myself a witch, but it definitely just gave me a perspective on like cool stuff that's going on in the world. So I like that one as well. And I've been listening to that one for quite a while too.
Yeah, and I think I don't consider myself a witch either, and I don't study any form of witchcraft or witch related spirituality, but I think just because I grew up in such uptight institutions, it's like my way of escaping that for a moment and just like learning about different culture that,
Yes.
instead of villainizing it or being so used to hearing it being villainized growing up, just like opening myself up to it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just sort of fun. Like I'm not a big spellcaster and I don't do lots of stuff with the moon and all of that, but I don't know, I like the witchy vibe, so I like to like surround myself with it. Maybe I'll come to that one day and be like really into the spell casting and stuff, and like I've done some candle magic and some little stuff like that, but not like super regular. But yeah, great podcast also.
you're based in the Northeast, right?
Yes.
So, have you been to the Witch's Brew in Long Island here in New
No, I
York?
haven't.
It is a restaurant, and you go in, it feels like you're like in a witch's house, and the menu is like all witch themed. It is delicious food. It's not just the look of it that's cool, the food is so good. Anyways, highly recommend to you and
I
to anyone
love that. I
listening.
love people. I just want to say this. I love people who can just create the most the best ambiance that really makes you feel. I just think that is so cool. Like down to every little detail. I really appreciate that about people because I'm a big picture person. So it's hard for me to be like that.
No, it's in the middle of kind of like industrial. It's like it's a neighborhood, but then across the street there are like all these industrial warehouses. There's nothing special about the neighborhood, hate to say, but it's in this old historic home, and you go inside, and it just like there's like lounge couches, and there's like black cat imagery. It's so cute. But anyways,
Love
highly
it.
recommend if you want
Love
that
it. Love it.
vibe. Um, and something I was going to mention about podcasting, for me it was also podcasts, and I guess maybe because podcasts tend to be, I mean, unless you have to subscribe to Spotify, or they tend to, they're free, they're usually free, and I think that's why I gravitated towards them too, because I mean, number one, I love to talk, I like hearing other people talk, and number two, because it was my first go-to. I think it was the most affordable, quickest option. I could definitely buy a book, but I just wasn't sure which book to buy.
So
um
many.
yeah, and I feel like podcasting, it just felt comfortable to listen in my ear to somebody who, like for me, it was Mediumship Matters by Hannah McIntyre. I did what you did. I listened to an episode, then I went from beginning. I even messaged her like, "Hey," like I did to you. I'm crazy. When it comes to podcasts, I go a little bit nuts. I'm a nerd. But I even told, like, I'm listening from beginning to end during the Christmas holiday. I'm so excited. She's like, "Oh my God, you're crazy, but I love you."
Oh, I
So
love that.
so yeah, for me it was definitely podcasting too. And are there any other resources you would recommend? Like if someone were to ask you like, where should I go to first if I want to develop this, or if I think I may have this ability?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, I love that question. The other thing I just want to pop about podcasts is that you can listen to them as you get ready for work or on your drive to work on your commute, and that's what I really loved. I was able to dive into sort of a different world and be learning while I was driving to my day job, or like while I was in the shower getting ready for my day job, stuff like that. So it kind of gives you, like, I couldn't read while I'm in the shower, but I can listen while I'm in the shower, that type of thing. So I love that about podcasts as well. Resources, the 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 thing that really wants to flow through right now is to look within. And that is, I can hear people sometimes right now saying like, "Oh my God, what a cop out. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?" But I find it to be so important. It's one of the first things that I did after podcasting. Or listening to lots of podcasts. I mean, I didn't like order a bunch of books or anything. I sort of just started taking little bits and pieces and applying that to my own self and my own life. And I think when you sort of go within and find your own ego and intuition first, I think that makes it really easy to learn other skills. So going within first and starting to recognize first, how does my intuition sound when it comes through? What does it feel like in my body? What does it sound like in my head? Do I get chills on one side of my body? Sort of starting to find out that stuff. And what does my ego sound like? Because sometimes they can sound like, it can be hard to tell in the beginning of your journey. Even sometimes now I'm like, wait, hold up a second. Which one is that talking right now? So really going within, and then the other things will just sort of start finding you naturally as you progress in your journey. Is that an okay answer? That's the answer that wants to
Absolutely.
come through.
No, absolutely. And as someone, I've been practicing and developing for 3 years, and what I can say today is, I mean, now we've kind of we also talked about this on your episode on your podcast. Um, with social media, there are so many books, so many resources that will tell us this is the right way to do it. And the more I develop and practice as time goes by, the more I'm like, you know what, it's those are nice resources to have and to look to, and they're valuable in their own right, but it really does come down to like, what is the language that you prefer, or that spirit works, uh the spirit uses with you. It is very individual, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. And so I'll give a little bit. So, okay, if you are interested in witchcraft, this is the only witchcraft book that I've ever read. It's The Psychic Witch by Matt Oren. That is a really great book. It gives you such a deep dive into witchcraft in general. And if you are interested, like you're hearing us talk about witchcraft and you're like, I kind of want to learn about that, that is a great book to start with. And like The Gift by, well, it's not in front of me. Well, that's not, The Gift is a really like the most basic psychic mediumship book. If you are listening to this and you're like, I have no idea what a clair is, like what is clairvoyance, what is clairaudience, what is that, that's the book for you. I'll have to grab it and give you the actual author at the end of this, but
Is it
that
Echo?
Yeah, Echo Bodine. Yes,
Okay.
yes. The Gift by Echo Bodine is a great book to start with. So those are two books I would suggest. Obviously, there's a wealth of amazing books, but those are some two that I feel really confident giving a suggestion. If you are looking for a more concrete answer, then go within your own self.
And I think there's something really special about finding resources, whether it's like I found a practice like Spirit Circle, Mediumship Circle, and in that circle from the very beginning, and I'm so glad I found the right circle. It was there was less a focus on this is how you should do it, and more focus on actually. And I'm still part of the same circle, same facilitator. She always says like just breathe and see what comes to you instead of breathe and what symbol are you getting, what image are you getting. It's like just see what
Right.
comes to you. It could be a sound, it could be a feeling, it could be body chills like you said. So if you I feel like especially if we're looking for resources, concrete resources, paying attention to whether that resource is very restrictive, even though valuable, restrictive, or if it's encouraging you to find your own language in all of this.
Ooh,
For
I
sure.
totally agree with that. And I do want to say I took classes to I really enjoy structure and accountability in that way. Like I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to practice with somebody this week. I know that I'm gonna get a handout sort of like giving me ideas on how to connect and stuff like that. I really like that. And what I will say, if you are interested in doing classes, take them from people that you like trust and that you didn't just one like 5 minutes ago find somebody on Instagram. You can feel a cosmic connection with them, and that's amazing. But I definitely say I'm an advocate for classes, and they should be from people that you really trust and feel like are, like have the right intentions before you give them a bunch of your money, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's like with anything else. You find a personal trainer, you want to jive with them. I made the mistake during the pandemic, during 2020. I wanted to like get healthy, and I just this Instagram ad like get abs and a body and 30 with this 30-day plan. I bought it, nothing I didn't know before. So yeah, it's like with anything, just make sure you vibe with the person. It's so important, especially with this work. I mean, most like particularly with this kind of work, it's really important.
It's so important. And I think it's so I bought random friggin' classes too before. You are not alone in that. I'll be like, oh yeah, I bought speaking of like a fitness one, I bought like an 8 week lit like progressive lift blah 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 because I wanted to be stronger. I'm like, I'm really weak. Okay, guys, I have really weak arms. I have noodle arms. So I was like, I want to be stronger. So I bought this thing. It was like $45, whatever. And I did the program, and I'm telling you, all I got out of it was anxiety. And like every day when I would lift, I would get anxiety in my chest. This is a real tangent, but it made me realize that I sometimes am quick to pay for things that like promise stuff, and like some people really are promising good things and they will give them to you, but that is one of the big reasons why I say to go within, because we really have everything that we need. And that has been a really big message from my guides over the past like 6 months, I would say, is that like we all want to be told how to get stronger or how to hone our clairvoyance or how to, I don't know, like be better at talking or public speaking. And there are people who provide those resources. And in the end, it is just all within you. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's just been a really big message that I've been getting from my guides lately. So it's a big one for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's all about the journey. And in the spirit of, no pun intended, in the spirit of what you were saying about the fitness package that you bought, like the one that I bought, the only thing that came out of that, it's kind of funny, but it was a whole plan of like upper body this day, lower body this day, abs on this day, cardio, like a 30-page thing for $30. And the only thing I got out of it is at the end, he says, for an ab workout, I literally just use 7-8 minute videos from the 80s that are on YouTube. I still use those videos today though. 4 years later, it's like these
Oh my
80s
gosh, I love
videos with like a guy that probably looks like a Tom, like his name's probably Tom, doing with like a stringer tank top, like
Oh
doing
my
abs
gosh,
on
I
the
love it.
beach. That's all I got. Anyways, I digress. But I think when people, I think when it comes to this work, I think the only promise we could ever make to somebody is that they definitely have the ability to connect. How to get there is not
Yes.
what we can promise, because that's something we do have to discover on our own. And when it comes to choosing a mentor, I think a mentor is somebody that shows you shows you, I don't want to say shows you your path, more like helps to like you have your light to to shine your path, and they have another light to make it even brighter. Like it's just
Ooh,
helping you down
yeah.
the path, like helping to show you your path, not to give you your path. So absolutely.
Ooh, I love that. I love that so much. And I think you couldn't have worded that better. I totally agree. Yeah.
I want to ask you, what has been for you out of all the experiences you've had with spirit and encounters of those kinds? What has been your most memorable or most impactful that like has really made an indelible mark on you?
Hmm. I have two thoughts on this. I'm going to start with a little ghosty story, and then I will share a just like a really cool message that I got from spirit during a mediumship reading a few weeks ago, and it felt so impactful, and I just wanted to share it. So okay, so my first one, little ghost story. So I was house sitting for my aunt and uncle. This was years ago. This was before I developed any abilities, or like, my door was flapping all over the place, right? So this was many years ago, and I was sleeping alone at their house. They had, a single family home, 2 stories. I was sleeping on the first level, and the bed was in the middle of the room, and there was a window off to the right, and I was sleeping on that side of the bed closest to the window. So I was sleeping peacefully, and when I have these experiences with ghosts, especially in the night when they like to come around, because my mind is much more relaxed, um I'll just find myself awake, basically. So I found myself awake with my eyes open, looking at the window, and there was a man in a uniform with his arms sort of behind his back like a professional, and he was looking out the window. He wasn't even looking at me, and I could see his whole face. I could see his facial hair, his hair color, and his whole uniform. And I just thought, there is a man in this room. Like, I really thought he is here. So I like scrambled for my phone, turned the flashlight on, and like shone it at the window. And obviously there was nobody there. I was fully awake now. And I was like, oh, that was weird. And that one just feels impactful to me because I saw so much detail in him. I saw his uniform. It looked like a pilot or something like that. And I told my aunt about this later, and she was a little bit freaked out, but she was like, "Oh, we found like she had found some stuff that alluded to, I can't remember what it was now, but she had found some stuff that sort of confirmed that he had been at one point living in the house." So
Wow,
that, yeah, so
that's
that wasn't
incredible.
really, yeah, that was an impactful ghost. That was one of the most clearest spirits that I have ever seen before. I've seen other ones like that feel a little bit more shrouded in just shape and either like feminine or masculine, like a few details. But this one was um, super duper clear. So that was that's just a fun little ghost story for anybody who is listening to this at night and going to sleep.
Like myself, but no, I like, so when you saw this man, this figure of this man, I love to ask this, excuse me, because I think it could look different person to person, but for you, like, it was as if like it might as well have been like a human in the flesh. Like, that's how clear it looked to you, right? Because people think,
Pretty
oh, are they
clear.
transparent? Can you see through them? But it just looked like there was literally a man, a stranger.
Yes, I would say there wasn't any color to it. Like, I feel like my mind's eye could perceive the color of his hair, but I'm not sure that my eyeballs were seeing that, if that makes sense. So I could tell, like, I perceived all of this and saw most of it with my eyeballs, but I would say that he was sort of like a gray or white, not full color, is the way that I would describe that. Yeah.
That's incredible. And just the fact that your family could confirm that he was in fact a living person in that home, that is beyond cool. Really
Yeah, it was
cool.
cool. It was a really cool experience. And it's funny looking back on that. Like, you would think at that moment I would be like, okay, I'm gonna dive into this. Nope. Just went on. And the other funny thing is, when that happens, it doesn't happen as much anymore because I'm much more controlled now than I was before. I was ignoring everything. But what usually happens is, like, I turn my flashlight on, right? And then I was like, oh, and then I just turn it off and go to bed. I don't usually sit there and be like, oh, holy shit, oh my God, a ghost in the house. What do I do? I just go back to sleep. So so I feel blessed in that, where I don't feel too freaked out about it.
I'm getting to that. Well, I didn't grow up seeing them. I've had only a couple experiences where I've seen them, but it was always peripherally and it would disappear when I looked in that direction.
Yeah.
So like I stayed at a haunted property, like my workplace. We do this retreat each year and it's on this property in Tarrytown, New York. And they said, hey, we have 5 rooms in the mansion, which they say is haunted, lol, because they want to make it a fun thing, which is fine. And they're like, who wants to have a room? I thought, should I do it? I raised my hand. I got a room. And that night, actually, was on Instagram Live that night, and things were happening in the room. And I slept with a lamp on because I'm still not, I grew up with a very intense fear of the dark. So and I don't fear the dark anymore. I cannot sleep with a nightlight. I need dark moonlight at the most. But I still am getting used to, like, I mean, if something were to appear in front of me the way that gentleman did, I probably would not be able to sleep if that were to happen to me. But I'm hoping over time I get more used to it. When things like signs happen around me and another person who maybe is not as invested in this realm of things, they may get a little freaked out, but I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's like, it's really cool. It's your grandma, or it's like, oh, it's just them sending a sign, or maybe that's spirit. But seeing things in full body form, that I will have some getting used to. I'll need to do.
Yeah, it is a different experience. And I will say I am also afraid of the dark. Like if I'm in the dark, I don't sleep with a nightlight or anything. I do like to sleep in full darkness. But yeah, if I'm like walking around in the dark, I'm like, what is here? And I think there is a difference between, like, you stayed in a haunted, like kind of confirmed haunted place. I would be freaked out to stay somewhere like that too. I think when it happens randomly in the moment, there's some sort of essence of calm that I can continue to have. But if I had walked into the space that you were in, knowing it was haunted, I would also be like, oh my God, okay, what's about to happen? So I get that.
Well, the thing is, this property, I was there last year, but I was staying in the more modern section. And I, even just walking on the property, I knew there wasn't anything evil. I could just feel it. So if I would have felt an evil, that's a whole other subject, evil versus good. But if I would have felt that there was, let's call it low energy on the property, I would not have raised my hand for that room. But I feel like, this is a woman who passed in her old age in this mansion. That's all there is to it. There wasn't any like affairs or a murder or like nothing that I think would have made it low energy. So even though I was freaked out, I knew it wasn't anything mean or with malintent, but I was still nervous for sure.
Oh yeah, and I would have been too, for sure. Yeah. The other thing I want to share, just about, since we're talking about experiences with spirit, is my little mediumship moment a few weeks ago during a reading, and just like a really cool message that came through, sort of just a general message about what the other side is like. And this man who was coming through for his nephew was basically sort of saying, like, he showed me an overflowing cup, like an overflowing chalice of water. And his message with it, I'd never seen that sign before. I was like, it's kind of new. His message with it was love and joy and like all these positive feelings that we feel down here in the 3D, like in this life, you can feel them so much more fully when you're on the other side. Like you don't just feel in 3D. Like it's almost like your joy experience or your love experience is like 5D intensified, and you feel it so much more intensely and so in like so many more ways. And I just thought that was such a cool message. And I was like, whoa, what a cool little tidbit from the other side. So I also wanted to share that because I think that's really like just a cool thing to think about.
That's beautiful. And I think it's so special when, it's one thing when we feel them, like when we're on our own, like we're meditating and we feel that come through, it's very special. And then when we're in a reading, you were doing a reading for somebody, you said, right? And it was their loved one or the person they knew that was making you feel this. It's like, I've had that experience too. It felt very similar, the image was different, but it's the same message, right? And so when I felt it, I was like, oh, like I feel so honored that you're telling me and your loved one this. Like, it was like, yeah, it hits different when the soul of somebody you never knew like wants to share this message with both you and your sitter, right? And yeah, I've also felt that, where it's that sensation of, you can't even describe it. It's the eternal love on the other side. It's like it is what it is. It just is. That's all there is. It's kind of mind-boggling, because our egos, our bodyguards, our human bodies, meat sacks, this is our barrier, so to speak. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I loved it. It felt like a super special message, and I'm glad that I was able to like hold on to it, because sometimes the messages come and go so fast and they're really not for us. So they'll just be gone the second you give them to your sitter. But this one really stuck with me, and I just thought it was just so lovely. So
Yeah, it's really those moments that, and it doesn't happen every reading for us, but I feel like it's moments like that, or just when we feel that they don't even have to talk about it, about like what the other side is like, just to feel that love. It's so special. It really is so
yeah,
special.
yeah, it's cool to be able to channel that for people and to receive it, for sure. Yeah.
Now, I sometimes speak to folks who feel very nervous about tapping into their abilities because they're afraid that they're going to unleash something, or they're afraid about meddling in something, or it could be so many factors. But if you could grab one of our listeners who feels this way, and you could just talk to them one-on-one, and they're telling you like, I'm afraid to open my door, what should I do? What would you say to them? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, because I was definitely afraid for a long time. I was like, what if I do mediumship and I get taken over? Like, like all these weird fears that pop culture feeds us, and religion, like organized religion, can feed us too. So, totally, first thing I say is like, I have totally been there. And the people who are doing this work are so normal. Like, we are just like everybody else. I'm gonna go down to the Wawa and get an ice cream and scratch off. Like, I have, we are regular human beings. Like, so don't be afraid of being in this space. Obviously, you're gonna run into like, some shittiness. That's like every community ever in the world. But
Absolutely.
there's so many people who you don't need to be afraid of in this space, and there's so many people who like genuinely want to help you move forward in this journey, because I think part of this journey about opening up to your abilities, or even just like living a little bit more of an intuitive life, is it opens you up to the magic of this world. Like, there's so much magic waiting for you. And I think if you approach this with excitement and discernment, which is really, really important, but mostly like excitement and knowing that you are like divinely loved and protected. It doesn't mean there isn't like bad, creepy shit out there, because there is. But you can approach it with joy and excitement and know that you are protected. And so my first step would be get in touch with your intuition and learn how to ground and protect yourself, because then that just gives you a really good foundation for moving forward in this work, I would say.
Yeah, and to your point about us being normal, was it you that I actually talked about Wawa? Did we talk about
Yeah, I think it
I
was.
think it
Yeah.
was you because I was raving about the cookies and cream milkshake at Wawa. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, I get my hamburger and fries at a bodega. I do not sit on a mountaintop meditating, and I am not vegan. I eat chicken, so I mean, to each their own, right? And I think something I was almost expecting is that, okay, once I develop this more, I'm going to be always tapped in. Is that all the time? And I mean, I would love to always be working on my relationship to my higher power, absolutely. But I mean, if someone cuts me off, I may say a curse word in my head. I may want to say it out loud, but I hold myself back. We are human. It isn't.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is more about, yeah, it's more about coming back to who we really are and being our most authentic. Actually, being our most authentic selves is probably one of the best ways to tap into our intuition, because we're
Mm.
trying to break down those barriers that we've been conditioned to have, and those walls that we put up. So yeah, absolutely agree with everything you just said. And I think what you said at the beginning and what you said just now is going within, and it's so important. Last thing I want to ask you is, what are your favorite ways of helping yourself go within? Like, some people meditate, some people like to go out for walks in nature. What is that for you, whatever it looks
Mm.
like?
Yeah, that is such a good question. So for me, there are a few things that help me do that. One classic answer is actually meditation. And I resisted this for quite a while too. I was like, why is meditation always the answer? But it's really just about finding one that really works for you. So yeah, that could be a walking meditation, that could be sitting down or like lying in the bath. like, you know, just find your meditation. Don't be afraid to try lots of different ways. So for me, what really works is sitting in quiet with some like rain sounds on usually, or like river sound, some sort of water sound, and just meditating for like 10 to 15 minutes. I don't meditate for like 30, 35, 40, 45 minutes. That's just too long. I have a 9 to 5. I have a day job. I shouldn't say 9 to 5 because I'm a freelancer, but I have a day job. And so yeah, I like, you know, and I'm a human being like we just talked about. So I have my limits. So I love to meditate when I can. I try to do it daily, but sometimes I fall off because I'm a human being. But so yeah, 10 minutes of meditation. If 10 minutes feels too long, start with 2 minutes, and just working on first your quiet, and then you can sort of start asking questions and meditate to receive answers, because a lot of my meditations aren't just quiet. I a lot of the time like to guide myself through feelings of worthiness, or like just marinating in the universe's energy is one of my absolute favorite things to do, to go within and to receive from the universe. So that's one of my favorite things to do. Walking is another really helpful thing that I find just helps me just shake out any excess energy that might not be mine. And that helps me just like come back to myself a little bit. And then one of the things that I've sort of discovered for myself recently that is really helpful is automatic writing, which I used to be really afraid of. And as a beginner, I was like, oh, what if I get taken over by something? I'm never going to do that. And then I just was in a class at the beginning of this year, and she was like, we're doing automatic writing. And I wasn't going to say no. So I did it. And that is a really cool way to go within. So you kind of put yourself in a bit of a meditative state. It is very important when you're doing automatic writing to ground yourself and set your intention for if you're wanting to connect with yourself or your higher self or your guides. So please listen when I say set your intention before you do this, because you are channeling at this point. So I pull up a Word document on my computer because writing, like typing, I'm type faster than write. And I ask a question, or it might just be, what do I need to know right now? And then I allow myself to type that answer out. So I set a timer too, so I don't get too lost in the sauce of the universe. But yeah, that is one of my new favorite ways to go within. Yeah.
You know, that makes me want to really try that. I've never done that before, and it sounds really lovely. And when, you know, setting the intention and grounding first, I think that could honestly, getting, you know, from me to you, one to one, like, I think that could really help me. I think that's a really wonderful piece of advice.
Yeah, and put some vibey music on. Like I like to put really like just vibey, spiritually sounding music. It just helps me stay in the zone. And yeah, I don't know. I've just found it to be a really cool tool lately for myself. So definitely wanted to share that too.
And also, I did not miss the fact that you called it the sauce of the from Sky Daddy to sauce of the universe. I'm living for your phrasing today. I'm living for these phrases. New hashtags.
Sauce of the universe.
Yep. Hashtag Sky Daddy. Yes, yes, yes. This has been so delightful. Tell listeners how they can find out more about you and what you do.
Thank you. I have absolutely loved chatting with you. So you can find me at openingthedoorpodcast.com or HaleyBPsychic.com. They'll just go to the same place, so no worries about that. And on there, you can book a reading with me. You can find the podcast if you're interested in clicking and finding more out about the podcast. And I do have some guided meditations for sale on there too. So if you do want to marinate in the universe's energy, like I just chatted about, I can guide you through that, because it's one of my favorite things that I've guided myself through. And so I figured I would share it with the world too. So super duper fun. So find me there. Find me on Instagram at Opening the Door Podcast, and also TikTok, Haley B Psychic on TikTok. Is it? Yeah. Yes, it is. It's Haley B Psychic on TikTok, and B is spelled BEA. And yeah, that's mostly where I hang out. You can find Opening the Door Podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts.
And it's a great listen. So highly recommend everybody. Well, thank you so much, Haley. It was such a joy to talk to you.
Thanks, Juan. I had so much fun.
If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.